And so, in the fourth talk and the third chapter in the book of Baumann and Tim May about how to think sociologically, it is about our communions and our groups and how we relate to them. And so they mention three types of groups and then focus on organizations in the modern life and how rationalization is the basis for these organizations. And I guess we're gonna be able to mirror all of this in our real life and whenever we are somewhere. And that's the beauty of such inspiring books, that they can mirror your reality, and they seem so close to the lived life that we have, that they become so important and good. And so when they talk about the relations in communions, it's like when people go together in a kind of a group, but that group becomes more than just the group that's opposing something they don't like. It's a group with a lot of values and ideas that keeps them together. So there is a bond that makes this group stick out as something special. And that comes out of the question, who are we as a group? And when this group of people have this kind of relationship and ask, who are we? They become actually connected in a kind of very special way that they weren't before. So there will be some factors in their life that make sense for the group itself. It can be different way of doing things. It can be a goal or a target, like if you have a group who go to tennis and another group who eat ice cream in the plaza, and political unions, economic unions, people of certain orientation, they will define who they are out of these bonds that is related to them. That is very much known and common sense. And so each member feels that he belongs to that group more than anything else. And so that group that has these things they are agreeing on becomes the core element of their relationship. And so they feel it's natural. It's like it has always been. They are just continuing a tradition, and especially the big kind of groups that meet in communions and communities. They will look back in history and see, well, our tradition has at least 1,000 years behind it, or maybe 2,000. You find it in the secret type of groups, the occult, as they say, or the secret societies, where they can go back and trace their relatively short or long history to something very precious and very important. And you have it, of course, in religions and in political parties that can go back. And so every kind of group feels it's natural. And the type of groups we can meet out there, according to the book here, is the groups that is built on something very common human. It's like, as we said, an activity they go and do together, a kind of production, a kind of spare time group that goes on a trip each year and meets on the same conditions. They become a community that has its own understanding and logic and can therefore work out of that. There is another kind of groups, and those are the religious groups, the groups of belief. And they seem not only wanting the group to just have something in common, they want also to preach to new members. They want a missionary go out and bring in new people. That can also be in secular unions and in groups that people have ordinary interest in, that they want more members. But it's mostly the religious and political groups that go out and do that. And while doing that, they start a lot of activities and human action and interaction. They put up a party, they make a kind of voluntarily day, they go out and try to meet people, and they have all kind of so-called rituals, or they have a band playing music. If it's political, if it's religious, maybe it's a hymn or a chant or something like that. And so by doing so, they attach their members more to the core of that group, at the same time as they go and try to bring in some new proselytes, new members, people, they can turn to their ways and from being neutral or being outside of everything, come and join us in this cause and find your identity or become member of something that has value and meaning for yourself and society. And so these kind of political and religious groups that that binds people in communities, they do not just want to see people, well, okay, we had this trip, it went well, everyone was satisfied, let's do it next year. They want also a special kind of loyalty and submission to the ways of that special kind of community and living in it. So the people can feel surveilled, can feel like ask critical questions, they can be reminded of their actions and the way of doing things. And they are always also sometimes between the trust and the doubt of those who have power in that organization, or the strongest believers, or the preachers, or the people who controls it. So is his loyalty to the party really strong enough? Let's see, let's follow him, and let's maybe even spy on him or her. And so it becomes something much more than just a kind of community or communion that goes and do some ritual or some activity together. It becomes a kind of, this is very important, that we have to take over your even the whole all aspects of your life. And many people who accept the way of life, they give it in, and they give part of themselves into that group, so that or that movement or whatever it is that is so strong, and they see themselves as very natural. And part of these groups can be the religious sects. And there's a difference between religious communities and religious sects. You can have big religious communities around the world who controls their member, wants the loyalty, and preaches for new members or for the old ones to keep their faith high. It can be a political party. But when you go into a religious sect or a political sect, that is where you go into some place of total control, and you get these kind of very, very defining bonds on these members. They are really just giving everything up, their thoughts, their way of life, what they owe, everything becomes part of the group's and the sect's necessities. And this is one type. The other type is the organizations, and they are much more widespread in our secular democracies, especially in several parts of the world. They are everywhere today, of course, also with the economic growth in globalism, where everybody is starting to look at capitalism as the way, and they need companies and organizations to organize things and change the way of handling society and the growing masses of people. So what is it that defines us in those organizations that are not communities, as we mentioned earlier? The difference is that organizations are there to fulfill a goal of a kind. It's very specific. And those organizations have like a limit. It's like we make an organization here to fulfill a goal of educating people with handicap, or we have an organization that tries to bring together people who want to do something for the society. And so institutions and organizations become a very limited targeted goal. But then the exciting thing happens is that these organizations evolve. And one of the most prominent figures who talked about that was Max Weber. And he is very important in that case, because he was very early on looking into these bureaucracies and how they were developing. And so let's take a look together into that with a little bit of quotes and words from the book. And first of all, you have the organizations. They have a kind of set of rules, and these set of rules are the ones that the members or the workers in that organization or institution have to adhere to. So they become the core of the membership of that organization. It's not a faith, it's not a community that goes on activity. It is a target you have to reach, specialized work you have to fulfill out there. And so you have a role, as they say. And that's again Irving Goffman. You have a role in that organization or institution. You can be the leader, you could be the one who's taking care of 3 handicapped kids, you can be the one who is cleaning, you can be the one who is making all the paperwork, and so on and so on. And so you go into that role. You are not expected to take all aspects of yourself into that organization, and you're not expected to bring all your values and thoughts and whatever you have with you there. And it's not a social sphere where you have to socialize and be also part of something joyful all the time, not in its basis anyway. While you find in the groups of faith, the communities of faith and the communities of political parties, the bonds are different, because people want also to socialize with the same members and the people that they share the values with, and they want to stay together all the time, and they want to go into that paradise of their group and stay in it all together. And so the organizations have a different target. They have something to act on. They have a goal and a target and something to fulfill. And whenever that is finished and the task is over, well, the members will be free, and they can go and have their other part of life outside the organization. And so the organization's role is to coordinate, communicate, and secure effective work from these people who is in it and attached to it. And so that's what's called rationalization. It has a rational target, ways to do it. When we reach the goal, we are done, and we do it as effectively and as problem-free as possible. So in this sense, the organizations only want your competence, they want your experience, they want what you know, the know-how that you are carrying with you. They do not want your social or religious or private life in that organization, at least not in the beginning, because we're going to see this development just in a minute. So the people who are in that organization, well, they are not important per se for themselves, and that also differs from the religious and political communities. Some people may be of great importance. Everyone is important because they need the members, or everyone needs the salvation. But in organizations, people are not important for themselves. They are dispensable, as they say, and you can change them out or get someone better or exchange them. So the members will quickly realize, as many have done already for many decades, well, I can do a lot of work in there and I can try to show something special, but it won't have the effect I want because, well, there is no reward for that, or seldom a reward, and I can be exchanged at any time. Nobody will miss me because the work is organized in such a way that it's based on effectivity and rational means. And that means, well, if I learn how to do it, they can teach somebody else, and that doesn't matter anymore who's doing the work. And so when Max Weber, he looked into that, a German sociologist of great importance in that manner, he talked about the continuous rationalization of these organizations. So they start wanting more and more effective and economical means of solving their goals. And they want to build up a system that can be based on routine and use the history of the organization as way to deal with whatever is needed to be dealt with. And so they need a hierarchy where someone has the power to go into the whole organization while others can be limited to a specific area or goal. And that starts now giving the organization its special way of being. So it wants to be rational. It's not person dependent, but it needs the competences and the efficiency, of course, and the people who can be effective. And so it will give you a role and a target, and it will give you special task to solve. So you do not need to interfere in everything or be part of the whole system. You can be small part in the big system. And that's all that's needed from you. And you do not need to exceed your limitations, and maybe you will not even know what you are doing because they don't want you to know. Those who are sitting in the central part of the organization, you have just to fulfill your role. Don't interfere in the role of others or in the general way the organization is being run. So they will put the task into small elementary operations, and so give the individual participant a place to do his bit or his work that he's responsible for, and in that way solve parts of what's needed to be solved, and it will be gathered together as what can you say, as a result of the work altogether. So you will have people who have the competency to solve some things, and some people will be given more access and more power than others. And in basically, this organization is led by abstract rules. So it doesn't take or shouldn't take personal notice of personal speciality. It's like the same rules for everyone, whoever it is. And that's in theory anyway, because in reality, these organizations evolve or devolve or whatever happens to them, they get distorted because there will also be a struggle of power inside the organization. Some people will be able to position themselves better than others, and a lot of stories have been about this, and a lot of studies as well showing how people who are closer to the boss or can appeal more to the one who leads the organization can sometimes get promoted despite others are giving more of their time and work and have more competence in that organization. So basically they should be rational and totally unpersonal, and only focusing on what people can do and how they do it and how to solve the problem. But it's not working like that, because you have the human part in it, and that's why they talk about that the organizations becomes in many ways they become the hierarchy that they don't want to have an effect on that organization. So with time and with all these goals, well, I think the word I was looking for was bureaucracy, because that's exactly the definition of these type of organizations. They work in a bureaucratic manner. That means they are focused on the target. They do not look at the personal differences, and they have a hierarchy, and they want to get effectively through every task, and it's very specialized. So in that way, it becomes what's called bureaucracy, or bureaucracy, that has taken over a lot of place and space in many studies recently as well, because it's what is basic of many places in the communities, whether they are official institutions or private ones. And so back to how they evolve or how they change, these places for work, they need an input and an output, and they need a result. And so the routine, it becomes a central part of how they do things. And that affects also the members. Shows several kind of studies. They are not really mentioning in the detail here, but it affects the way people will do things. And it has been called the McDonaldization of society. It means, well, a gray man or woman sits there finishing the same paperwork every day and running through the names of people, whether it's taxes or it's applications or it's some special kind of allowances or checks or control, whatever it is. They're just going through things as if it was people will disappear behind those papers and applications, and the citizens will become unimportant. It's not because they don't feel they are important, because basically they are there for the citizens to solve, give a service or solve a situation that is needed so society can function. But how it works from the inside in that bureaucracy, it becomes like Well, routine, finish your work, and next in line, or whatever it is, and people will become those uh, like stone, or what you say, metal, something that is not important for themselves anymore. They are a case like anything else. And so in that way, these organizations becomes gathering archives, and those archives will be the precedences for new cases. And so every time they want to check out on something new somebody is applying, even though they can differ, they go back and see, well, how did we answer the last case, and we will give the same answer to this guy. But this guy can maybe protest and say, well, my situation is not the same, and so you go into a very lengthy discussion and trouble with this official institution, who's actually slowly becoming itself closest. It's like it's going into itself and its way of dealing with things as the important. And the power that's invested in these organizations, institutions, and service places in society, whether they are official or private, their importance become inward. And yeah, of course, they are there to give a service for somebody else, but they become like the important part of. It's the same with the stock markets, where they become so invested in that jungle of theirs that the owners become second line. And we have seen that in many funny movies as well, how they try to show that part of it. And so in that way, you have a specialization that is rational, but really not rational anyway, because behind the lines and behind the procedures and the way of dealing with things that have just managed to talk about, there is the management. And the management is generalized. They can interfere in any place and in any way in that organization to make it working more effectively. But at the same time, the people who are working in the specialized area, they will be required to give more of their time and show more, engagement in the work they are doing. And by doing so, they hope to get some merits. They hope to get like a reward or a new post or something like that. And so it becomes an inner competition to get to those with power to be granted something for their work. And that's why we see a lot of stories focusing on the frustrated worker who turns against the system and doesn't want to be there anymore and feels overseen by somebody who is less insanity or less in efficiency, and they turn against the system and become very, very bitter and like they want to destroy it or tear it down, because it becomes a kind of a self-governing logic that does not have anything to do with the logic it started on. And so the organizations evolve into being a kind of community that has its importance in itself. So this is the point here. It becomes the community, like we had with these religious communities, political communities, where the members of it have to give loyalty, submission, and a lot of their life and time to that organization, and they will ask more and more of these individuals, so they become totally a part of that organization, and so it begins wanting to control more and more of their life, or wanting to understand more parts of them. That's why they create HR management, because it's about, well, what are these people doing in their spare time, so they are not working so effectively as we want them to in the daily in the daily time. And in that manner, that organization, in its run for the total rationality, it wants to be total effective, total rational, have the perfect routines, and deliver the best system. And so it wants its members to run and work even more and even harder, and they are maybe under the threat of being fired or being put aside if they do not do that. And the people in power will become like using that hierarchy in another way than it was intended, because they do not act as these gray what can you say, undifferent people. They look at all people in a certain way. And so a new dynamic evolves in this organization from the inside, and then they want to understand every aspect of life of this organization and the people working in it, because trouble can arise, discussions, disagreements, people will get into a bad mood, psychological and socially, not really adherent to each other. And so a lot of things have to be resolved and solved in those organizations, especially when they grow and become big companies or big places that they have to govern hundreds and maybe thousands and hundreds of thousands of workers. And so there are basically two ways of doing this. There is the way of the fear and what you say, like you can rule with fear or incitement, and you can like make people want to work there because of what they can get of benefits and some kind of special goods or a better position or extra salary, a bonus in a way. Or they can be run by fear. So you will be kicked out and nobody will hire you ever again because you will have a bad resume and you will be disgraced. That's one way of running organizations, and they found that is very demotivating, because that organization is built on rationality, because they need to be effective, they need to deliver the best work, and they can see that effect on humans is not the best. People will work like machines, and as we say, machines in the old days, God knows what these new AI machines are going to be able to with their copying of human behavior, but that's another talk. And so they will be like just people, like a robot, delivering something and not really engaging themselves in the work. And so they found that there is another way, and that's managing people's motivations and engagement in these organizations, all for the goal of that organization. And here it becomes to look more and more like that all round control of the members. You become invested in knowing a lot of who is this guy married to, and why is she late, and what's the trouble with her kids, and is she now pregnant again, and how will that affect the organization, and should we take someone in who has these or those affiliations, and what will that do to the other members, and will these people be working effectively? And so they try like to organize things and streamline. This is also a very key word in organizations. They want the streamlining of everything, both the routines, the works, and in the end, also the employees. They need to be loyal to the organization, to the family, and they need to be engaged in it and show motivation for it and invest a lot of their time in it. Maybe if you go home and think about it, it will be even better. You are more praised if you go home and still keep thinking of your work and how to solve it the next day. And so you take your work with you home, and you take it with you in bed when you sleep, and it's with you under the breakfast talk when you are sitting with your kids or the people around you. And so all your time is invested in that organization and how you solve the problems or how you rise to get closer to the center or hierarchy. And people who make it through, they feel they have achieved something. I made it to the top. I became the new director, or I became the new section chief, and that was a hard thing to do, and I pushed myself through. And so they become all invested in that organization. In that sense, it becomes like a religious community or a kind of political party that you can evolve into and become part of the hierarchy in the top and the power base. And so others will be, of course, pushed down and pushed back, and that will have another effect on those because they will be demotivated and maybe turn against, or maybe not understand the reasons why this specific lady got the job and not that guy or that lady. And so this is what's going to happen in those organizations. One other aspect, as a writer called David Lyon in his book Surveillance Society, he talked about that organizations, they will use surveillance and gathering of information about their workers and people who are related to them or part of their both power hierarchy and specialized places, because they want to know if they can keep the secrets, especially if it is sensitive information, and they want to know if they are totally loyal, and they want to know a lot about their thoughts and ideas and background and personalities. And so they really overstep that private sphere of many of the people, all under the name of making the organization run effectively and rationally. And they will overstep a lot of the people's private sphere and social sphere and ideas from the private life, because that becomes important for how the organization is run or functioning or delivering its products. And so the selection also begins, and you will get more and more heterogeneous organization, homogeneous organization that is very much look-alike. And so you find many places where you go in, you'll be surprised at how much these workers actually look like each other and how much they are just the same in even being creative or non-creative at all, being motivated or demotivated at all, because these organizations has this way of just streamlining people because of its rational behavior. And so they talked later about what's called the cultural turn in organizations, because when that went almost totally wrong, some researchers started looking into what is wrong with these organizations, how can that be turned? And they started that what's called management theory, based on the idea of values, engagement, motivation, teamwork, the person having himself along in that work he's doing or she's doing, and keeping part of herself, and can see that this will bring her to bonus or achieve whatever she wants to achieve. And that's why personality tests become part of how you build HR management, because you want to know what is actually the goal of this or that person, and how can we help them achieve it, make them relax, make them feel at home, make them have a place where they can go to the gym or have their room for worship or whatever they like, and have the space to go and take the kid to the school or dentist and get back again without being fired or getting into trouble. And so they started looking into a new way of management, because that total rationality they thought they were doing became a total suppression of the human side in those people. And so, as you can see, there's two sides that will and stay in contrast with each other, and always in a kind of odds with how things are run. There's the human soft side, as we say, the soft values of who you are. It's everything that's surrounding the work that you deliver. What are you doing in your spare time? How happy are you in your family? What are you healthy or not? And what do you think? And how do you use your thoughts? Do you sleep well at night? How about the activities? Do you feel satisfied with your salary, your workplace, your workmates? All these things becomes important for the people who are running the management in the organization, because they want people to deliver their best. And they could see from the old management theory that they would not be able to deliver their best if they are not satisfied. And so maybe the conclusion of all this is that the way organizations are run most ideally is to be interpreted and reinterpreted continuously, so they can always fit that harmony between the rationality, effectivity, and deliverance, and productivity, well-being, and motivation of the people who are in it. That's of course my look into this, and not a quote from the book itself, but it's like leading us to that. One final thing they talk about is Erving Goffman's talk about total institutions, and how society sometimes have the tendency to turn into total institutions. That's a very, very dangerous and peculiar and very, very important issue. We are seeing it around the world today with growing surveillance of people. We can see the total institutions. In the old days, it was like prisons, places where you are committed the whole life, secret services, intelligence agency, some kind of military work, social service in a very special way. Then you are committed the whole life. and they can control you, and they can deny your exit of those organizations, and you give basically your life to that. That's what we see in the spy movies anyway, but that's true also in reality. So these total institutions, where there is a power that controls you and forces you, you are under force, and that's why you're called a force, a workforce. That can have a hidden meaning as well, because some part of it is just under the control. You are not free to come and go as you like, and you are not free to have the associations you want. You have to be the total loyal defender and worker and the eyes and ears of the country and its values and whatever you are defending, or the organization and its values and whatever that stands for. And so these total institutions have been important to look into, because if you look at many societies today, there's this growing surveillance systems, both through what we say and do, and where we go and come, and how we work, and what kind of preferences we have. And sometimes it's hidden in ads, and looking into what's your interest and who you meet with and what kind of people you talk to. And all that is becoming more and more look like a total institution, like a total surveillance society. We are already in that in some places in the world, and in some places it's hidden. It is there, but it's hidden, and it's cleverly used. In some places it's bluntly used. Like you go into some countries, you can see, well, it's they survey you and they can take you off the street whenever they like, showing you the video of yourself that you are a criminal and you're bad for society, and so you disappear. Other places, they use it more wisely. Say, let's not provoke people unnecessarily, but we can at any time even look into like what people are wearing underneath their pants, because we knew what they bought and where they bought it. And so that total surveillance is an offspring of some kind of institutions where people really are taken by the power and losing much of their so-called free will and choice, even though that can be limited in many ways. But here it is totally limited. It's a kind of surveillance that does not appeal to your motivation or loyalty or work, or try to promote something, or get into the goal of society. It is appealing to one thing alone, and that is your feeling of loyalty to that place you are in, or have come from, or have been chosen to, and that you should see it as a punishment or a privilege, that you are part of those places that you have been chosen to. And if communities become like that, you are privileged to be in our country. So don't talk, don't speak, don't criticize, don't go in ways we think is dangerous and bad. You are privileged to be from this and that nation. You're privileged to be part of this or that society. And that's the total institution surveillance that we come to. So to sum it all up, there are two types of groups. The first one is those who are surrounding our life in free time, like if you go as a part of a sports club or something. And there are these who are like more religious or political affiliations, where your values are met, and you meet people who share your thoughts and ideas and beliefs, and you have a social and economic community there. And so there are the third way, that the third type is the organizations as they function in society. They can be economical, they can be social services, they can be taxes, they can be political organizations, anything that functions as an organization with the target to deliver some product, and they want to deliver it as rational and effectively and to the time and point as possible. It can also be construction or whatever it is. And so they have been looking into these three and how they function and how they claim the time and life of their members. And that's what this chapter or this part of the talk is all about. It's the claim of who you are and why you should adhere to that organization, and how they control you, survey you, or maybe motivate you to do what is needed to be done.